Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Harley Benton HB35 Plus semi-acoustic electric guitar. So let's take a deep dive right in. At is how this guitar is made, how it plays, and obviously how it sounds, and see if it's worth your hard-earned money. So what I want to say right off the bat is this is not a sponsored video. I don't get paid for making this review, so this is just my honest opinion, having owned this for a couple of months now. So on with this review. This guitar obviously looks a lot like the famous Gibson 335, and there's a lot of similarities in the way that it's set up. Obviously you've got your humbuckers and your three-way toggle switch, which obviously on a Gibson is down here. There are some really unique features with this guitar which I really like, and I'm really glad that they included it in the setup. The main one for me is the inclusion of these push-pull volume pots. So you can actually split these humbuckers into being single coils, and they do sound good. In the sound test later on I'll show you exactly how I use it to get the most out of this guitar, and you don't get that with Gibsons and other Epiphone style guitars that are these semi-acoustic designs. You tend to just get straight up humbucker, but the configuration of this setup is really unique. One of my favourite sounds with this guitar at the moment is to actually engage the pull switch on the neck pickup, which turns it into a single coil, so you then can use the single coil and a humbucker together, and the humbucker and the bridge and the cleaner sound of the neck really give it a lovely sound. We'll come on to that in a bit in the sound test. So how is this guitar built? Well, I've got to say, it was a bit of a risk when I bought it. When you buy a cheap guitar, you don't expect to get such great finish. Now this guitar is really well made for the money, and I wasn't expecting it to be finished quite so well. One of the main things when you're a guitar player is how it feels against your body and how the neck feels, because this is where you get more of the feel of the instrument. One of the telltale signs with a cheap instrument that I've noticed over the years is quite often the frets are not finished very well. But surprisingly, this guitar, it's not completely rolled, so what they call rolled edges. But actually the frets, as I feel the way down there's only one or two very slight sharp edges on some of them, but I can live with that. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm not averse to taking lutherie tools like fret files to my guitars to make them absolutely perfect. But I've got to say, I'm really blown away by this. The one or two sharp edges that they may be, they're so slight that just through natural playing that'll smooth those off, and it's really not worth the effort. It plays so nicely straight out of the box that I'm really impressed with that, and I've got to say Harley Benton did a great job with this particular guitar. I'm hoping for you guys and for anyone else who buys a Harley Benton that they're all finished to the same sort of standard, which, having done my research before I bought this, seems to be the case. Most people who buy these Harley Benton guitars say that they're finished very well and they're made very well, and I can actually back that up and say that is totally true. Now this is the HB35 Plus model, and what you get for the extra bit of money versus the standard HB35 is you get a AAA flamed maple top, which, as most people have said with these guitars, it's not such a strong flame, but it is definitely there. It probably doesn't come out in this light, but under natural daylight it's got a nice little flame inside that colour. Most of these guitars, especially the Gibson guitars, some of them have great flames, some of them don't have any flame at all, so it's kind of personal preference. I like the fact that there's a little hint of it, but it's not too strong, it's not too flash, it's a bit of a workhorse. These guitars always look really quite interesting and quite serious, like you're a proper musician. I know it sounds a bit funny to say that, but whenever you see somebody playing one of these, you think that guy knows a thing or two. And usually with these guitars, there's a few cheap elements to them to try and save the cost, unless you're batting with the full-on Gibson 335, in which case, number one, you're probably not watching this video, and number two, you've probably paid about £4,000 to £5,000 for it, up to maybe 8,000, depending on how old it is. These are just a couple of £100, so you've got to think, well, where are they saving the money? How can they produce an instrument of similar quality or similar sound? But they've done a great job. The bridge is really fantastic, stays exactly as it should do, nice and solid, no tuning issues whatsoever. The actual tuning heads look good, look the part. They do look a little cheap. You may want to upgrade them to the sort of older sort of vintage style tulip tuners. I've got to say, when I bought this, I thought I'd probably get it, do a review, maybe try and record with it, and then maybe sell it. But at the moment I'm really digging it, so I probably will end up keeping this. The neck is jointed fantastically. So that's another area where often you see that shortcuts have been made, but this is set beautifully. There's no gaps. The binding, there's no wobbles in the lines, there's no sharp edges, there's no gaps in it. It's all perfectly done. I can't find any flaw in the finish. Now, have I just got a really good one? If any of you guys have got a Harley Benton guitar, either this model or the lower spec or any other style Harley Benton, it'd be interesting to hear from you in the comments below whether or not your finish is as good as this. In terms of the wiring inside the guitar, sometimes with the cheaper models you can see all kinds of cheap looking nasty wiring going on, but that's not the case with this. Everything's tucked out of the way nicely. What I can see looks good quality. It's not, as you would imagine, the vintage instruments have cloth covered, really nice looking authentic wiring, which I usually do with my guitars. I'll remove all of the guts of it and replace everything. But obviously at the moment I've just been getting used to this configuration and how to get the best sounds out of it, and I'm really impressed with the sounds. There's nothing about this that I would change, and at the moment I'm not feeling a desperate need like I often do with guitars to replace all of the wiring and get all the original kind of spec caps and pots and silver solder and all the rest of it. At the moment this is sounding really, really impressive, especially for the money. In fact, I wouldn't even use that as a phrase. A lot of people say, oh, it's really good for the money. This is just good full stop, no matter what. So I've got a very expensive Fender Telecaster up there. This sounds better than that. I know it's a very different guitar, and that's why I have it. I have a couple of different instruments for different purposes, especially when I'm recording. But this sounds, straight out the bat, as soon as you plug it in, it's got beef, it cleans up nicely, it feels great to play, the neck is great. One of the things you'll notice about this guitar is that it has the mother of pearl effect block inlays, and again that's one of the reasons I went for the HB35 Plus over the standard version. I really like that feature in the guitar of this style. It just looks a little bit more authentic, and I really dig that vibe. They're finished fantastically, so I'm sure, as you can see, there's no issues with the finish. The fretboard's fantastic. I did lemon oil it when I received it. A couple of videos that I had watched before I purchased this instrument noted that there was a slightly scratchy feel to the fretboard. When I bought this guitar, took it out of the box when it arrived, I noticed straight away that that scratchy feeling was there. And I think that's just because these strings are supposed to be 10s, and they're just going to be a no-name brand, again, just to save costs. But most people replace the strings immediately when they buy a guitar, just to get a nice fresh set of good quality strings on there. I haven't done that with these because I wanted to just play it as it is for a couple of months, just to sort of feel how it went. Lemon oiling the fretboard has worked wonders. It's smoothed it right out. And obviously you've got to remember these frets won't be polished to the highest level either, especially for the price. It is a budget instrument. So a lot of the polishing will happen as I play it, and the bends and the fretting that you do when you're playing your guitar, that all helps to smooth the frets out. It just takes a little bit of time. But I think the main culprit is these strings. They're not particularly smooth. As soon as I stick some Ernie balls on here, and I'm sure that technically these are 10 strings, but they feel a bit like 9s. They're a bit like spaghetti. Once I upgrade them to Ernie balls, I'll probably go with 10s or 11s. I usually play 11s. I've actually got 12s on the Telecaster. I just prefer the strong sort of feeling, the thicker tone that you get with thicker strings. So I'll probably put 11s on here, and I'm sure it'll feel buttery smooth, just the same as all my instruments. So no worries there. So one of the interesting features about this guitar are the pickups. They're branded up as Roswell, and I've noticed that these are the slightly upgraded pickups versus the standard HB35 model. And now I would say they're fantastic for the price, but again, it's not just for the price. I've played some fantastic guitars over the years. I've had Gibson Les Pauls, very rare guitars with proper PAF Pros in them. These sound every bit as clear, so that's really high praise. I'm not thinking of switching these out, which I did initially think I would do. I thought, well, as most people do when they modify guitars, the humbuckers or the pickups are the first things you switch out. But with these, they sound superbly clear. There's loads of crunch, there's loads of cleans, no muddiness whatsoever. So really impressed with these. One of the best features, as I've mentioned, is that the push and pull feature of having a tone switch for both bridge and neck means you can mix and match them, and the dials still work perfectly well. They're really nice. They don't feel cheap, they don't feel flimsy, there's no electrical interference, there's no crunching or popping when you do that. It's just completely silent operation. Really, really useful. I have used this guitar recently for doing some recording, and I actually found that there was so much variety in the sounds that basically I was spoilt for choice. I ended up discovering this, what I think of as a fantastic little hack. Having the neck pickup as a single coil just opens up this whole new tonality, which I've got to say I don't think I've ever heard before on a guitar. The single coil and the bridge humbucker together is so sweet, it's so nice that that's my default position now for playing and recording. In this position you have a nice bit of warmth and clarity coming from the neck, and a bit of bite and crunch and beef coming from the bridge, and that combines to give you a really incredible sound, and I'll give you a demo of that in a second. So overall, the fit and finish of this guitar, I would say, is probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10, and that's not just for a budget instrument, that's for any quality instrument. Nothing on it is cheap and flimsy, everything's good quality metal, chrome plated in most cases, but it's not cheap, flimsy rubbish. It's actually really well done. It's impossible to imagine how they can do this much guitar for such little money, if I'm honest. I would expect to probably pay £300–400 more than I did for this instrument. One of the interesting features I did notice immediately when I got it out of the box was that this has got a very similar profile headstock to the original Gibson guitars. Now it wouldn't surprise me if some unscrupulous owners were to sand off the front headstock, respray it black and stick a Gibson logo on there, and they would have a very, very similar look to a Gibson 335. Now I wouldn't recommend that, and I certainly wouldn't do it myself, but I know lots of people out there like to fake it till they make it, and that's about as close to similar headstock shape that I've ever seen this day and age without getting into copyright issues. So I'm sure somebody who's handy with a Dremel could actually modify that slightly and end up with a very, very similar looking Gibson headstock. But I'm absolutely happy with it the way it is. It is what it is. For me, for recording, this thing sings. When you think about what you're getting for the money, I don't think there's a better guitar right now out there than this particular HB35 Plus. Harley Benton have done a great job in manufacturing this for a price that most of us can afford. It's not the cheapest of the cheap. The value to me is massive. The price outlay is not. So that's the perfect ratio really. There's not too many of those out there these days. You tend to get what you pay for, whereas this, I think you get a lot more than you pay. So what we'll do now, guys, we'll do a sound test. I'll run through all the different setups, all the different tone possibilities. We'll go through clean, crunch and then distortion, and then we'll come back at the end and do some final conclusions. Okay, see you in a second. guys, so what did you think to that? Some really interesting sounds there, right? I think I really looked out with this. I've always had a fondness for these. So I'm really happy with this. It's got a timeless look and a timeless feel to it. So guys, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps me grow this channel. It helps me keep up with the content and lets me know that you're into it. So thanks for watching, guys. Catch you soon. Over and out.